welcome to Moving Kentucky Forward. I'm your host, Bruce Maples, and in this week's show, we're joined by Jacqueline Coleman, the Democratic nominee for Lieutenant Governor running with Andy Beshear. We talked with her about education, the race itself, and why people should vote for her and Andy this fall. It's Monday, September 9th, and time to move Kentucky forward. Let's get started. So we're here with Jacqueline Coleman, who is running with Andy Beshear for governor and lieutenant governor. Welcome to Moving Kentucky Forward, Ms. Coleman.
Thank you so much for having me.
I have to say that the more I looked into your life and your background and studied up on you, the more I really wanted to have a long and extended interview, because I think there's so much about your background that people aren't aware of and don't realize. But I know that time is precious when you're close to an election. So assuming you all win, maybe we can have a nice sit-down interview sometime in 2020.
That sounds great.
But, you know, you've got a master's degree in poli-sci. You're working on a doctorate in educational leadership. So obviously education is a big thing in your life. Tell me how that figures into what you're doing right now.
Well, education certainly is a big thing in my life. And in addition to the degrees, I have been a high school teacher my entire career, most recently an assistant principal. And so I pretty much live it too, I guess you could say. But it's playing into what we're doing right now in several ways. One, I'm sure you have noticed that there is quite a divide between the current administration and public education in Kentucky. There is an undeniable war on public education right now, with teachers on the front line of that, and we're fighting for our schools and we're fighting for our students, and have been for several years now. And so I think that experience is invaluable, as well as the fact that we have not had a teacher in the executive branch, in the lieutenant governor's office or governor's office, in my entire lifetime. Martha Lane Collins was the last candidate to serve in that manner, and I think that pretty much explains why we're in the situation we're in right now, because not only have we not had that representation, but under this administration, our voices have been silenced. We've been shut out of the Capitol. We've literally and figuratively, we've been shut out of any kind of policy decision-making, and the folks who are making decisions for our students don't have any experience in the classroom. And, you know, I think there has been a pretty obvious rising up of public education in Kentucky, and I'm happy to say that I've been a very active part of that, and I hope to advocate for my kids in my classroom from the Capitol, just as I always have as a teacher.
So I would agree with you about the war on education. In fact, we wrote a post about it some time ago. Why do you think that's happening? What's the reason for that?
Well, honestly, I think it's because this administration is very pro-charter school. And I think that they have really worked hard to dismantle public education in a way that they can point to it and say, see, we told you it's not working, and we have to have charter schools. And that was going to be their excuse by underfunding us, by sticking our retirements in a sewer bill and unconstitutionally rushing it into law, by calling us names and questioning our character and our work ethic and a million other things. All of those things are deterrents for new teachers to join the profession, for good teachers to stay, and for experienced teachers to not retire, even though they're able to. And all of that, I think, was one big concerted effort to demonize public education for the sole purpose of promoting their charter school agenda in Kentucky.
From your experience going across the state, do you think that has succeeded? Do you think educators are giving up and leaving?
You know, in some ways, yes. Unfortunately, I think that has been part of the backlash. I have lots of colleagues who are able to retire, and they wanted to stay, but they were afraid that if they did, of what would happen to their retirement if they continued to stay active in the school system and weren't already retirees. I've had several college students come up to me at our events or at rallies and say, I was going to be an education major, but now I'm kind of nervous about it. I feel like public education is in limbo, and I don't really know if I'm going to stick with it. And of course, I tell them, please stick with it. If that's what you want to do with your life, that's your passion, then you need to make sure that you answer the calling. But also, I make sure that they know how important elections are and that Andy and I have their back. And we're going to restore the respect to public educators and public education that they've worked so hard to achieve. And not only that, but we want to continue to support them with policy and continue to build up the profession so that we can establish a world-class public education system right here in Kentucky.
Well, I saw the plan that you all released about pay raises and some other benefits for teachers. Obviously, that takes money. How do you all think you would get that through the legislature?
Well, when we talk about budgets, a budget is a blueprint of your priorities, and it is fairly obvious to say that public education is one of mine and Andy's top priorities. Obviously, I've worked and spent my career in public education, and Andy believes in it so much he picked a public school teacher to run with him. And that to me is putting your money where your mouth is, for sure. But I would also say that when we talk about our priorities, we're going to make sure that this is funded in our budget. And the Bevin administration has been able to find money for cuts to or not cuts, sorry. They've been able to find money for a tax break for the wealthiest Kentuckians. They've been able to find money to fund other pet projects of theirs. And so what I would tell you is it's there. It's just a matter of making sure that it's a priority. And that's what we're going to do.
Do you happen to know off the top of your head how many public school teachers there are in Kentucky?
There is about, I would say roughly about 42,000.
I just, in my mind, I was thinking 2,000 a person, 42,000. You do the math, and the money they spent on the Brady plant might have paid for that. It's just interesting.
That's a great point. See, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like I said, it's there. It's a matter of making sure that our money is spent to reflect our priorities, and the Bevin administration has done that, and we see they have shown us exactly who they are and exactly who they're for. And Andy and I plan to do the same exact thing, but in a very different way.
One of the things in your background is politics, in addition to education. So let's change gears for just a minute. This is a state that has become red, at least at some levels. What makes you think right now that you have a shot at winning?
Well, I would say that this particular race in 2019 supersedes political parties. We have a governor right now who is in office who has attacked public education. He has personally called teachers names. He has made enemies out of his own lieutenant governor. They are currently battling in court because he fired her staffers without her knowing, and they can't even reach an agreement on what to do about it for the next 2 months. So they're battling in court. He just recently insulted his primary opponent from this year's governor's race.
Right.
He's made enemies out of House leadership when he first got to town. He made enemies out of his primary opponent the first time he ran for governor in 2015. And so what I would tell you is that a lot of these folks who we may believe have historically been beholden to party still can't even hold their nose and vote for Matt Bevin because he has absolutely left a trail of destruction everywhere he has gone. And that includes Republicans as well as Democrats.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. Obviously, as you go across the state, I ran for office, and whenever you are, rallying, the people who like you come to the rally. So, what are you hearing from Republicans and people who voted for Bevin in the past? Are you having people come up and say, "Yeah, not this time. I voted for him last time, but not this. I'm voting for you"?
Absolutely. I would say there is a large swath of people who may have voted for Matt Bevin the first time, who, after the last 3 to 4 years of watching him show us who he is, are not going to make the same mistake again.
Do you think that the money that's coming in to run ads is going to have a lot of impact, or are people sort of burned out on all the ads on both sides?
You know, it's hard to tell. I think people are pretty tired of political ads and political attacks, and it can be pretty exhausting, especially in this climate. I know, but I will tell you that the money that's going to pour into this state from other places on the Republican side, all of the dark money that's going to flow in, absolutely is a concern, because sometimes a race is is based on how much money you have to drown out the other person, which
Right.
is really, really, really fortunate. And that's why Andy and I have really focused on making sure that we put forward a vision for Kentuckians that we know is going to work for every Kentucky family. And that's what we continue to do as we travel the state, and that's what people believe in. And I know there's a lot of people who are tired of attacks, and they may work for some, they may not work for others, but in any case, I think it's pretty safe to say that on the major issues that give Kentuckians anxiety, healthcare, public education, pensions, job creation, that Andy Beshear and I have put forward a vision that's going to lift up every Kentucky family. Matt Bevin has had 4 years to do that, and from all angles that I have, my vantage point, he failed.
Okay. Let me wrap this up with the question that I ask any candidate every time I interview them. You're standing on my front porch and you're trying to get me, you're talking to me about the election. Tell me why I should vote for you and Andy Beshear.
Well, you should vote for Andy Beshear and myself for governor and lieutenant governor, because we have built our careers and we have shown who we are by fighting for the little guy, whether it's the students in my classroom, whether it is children in Kentucky that Andy has fought to protect, with the fight for health care, the fight against the opioid epidemic, human trafficking. All of those things point to our values and what we believe in and what we're going to fight for. And many people know that I recently found out that I am expecting and will be having a little girl in February. And I will tell you that that makes me realize more than ever how much elections are about trust. And the question that you have to ask yourself when you go to the ballot box on November 5th is, who do you trust to fight for your family? Who do you trust to lead Kentucky forward and to make sure that policies are out there that lift up every Kentucky family? And that answer is pretty simple in this election. There's a very easy contrast, and that is Andy Beshear.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that could be a really good motto just on its own. Who do you trust this election?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jacqueline Coleman, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to let you get out of here because I know you've got a busy schedule. And as I said, after you all win in November and after you have a little girl in February,
Uh-huh.
I hope sometime next year we can sit down and have a good long conversation.
Well, thank you. That would be great. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
All right. Take care. That was Jacqueline Coleman running for Lieutenant Governor alongside Andy Beshear, who is running for Governor. A big thanks to Ms. Coleman and her staff for working out a time for the interview. They are spending all day, every day, talking with voters, but they worked in a time for us to do the interview, and we thank them. And as she said, there's one simple question that everyone should ask about this election. Who do you trust to work to lift up every Kentucky family and to address the kitchen table issues that Kentuckians are facing? Voting for Beshear Coleman seems to me to be the pretty obvious choice. September is a membership drive month for us, so you'll be seeing and hearing a lot about becoming a paying member. A big thanks to the many people who have signed up over the past few months, because their support is what keeps us going. If you aren't already a member, please consider becoming one. The basic membership is just $3 a month, and that gets you unlimited access to all our regular content, plus a discount in our online store. Become a member today so that you can get more out of Forward Kentucky and so we can do even more for you. That's all for now. See you next week.